welcome to What If We Can Change It All, the podcast, a podcast created by Movement Medicine. My name is Gianine, and I believe that we have the power, and therefore we can change it all. So this podcast is all about reclaiming your power. Hello, lovely people, and welcome to this new episode. It is me today, and I wanted to tap into something. And it is a big word because I want to talk about trauma, but also like the many misconceptions that there actually are about trauma, right? Because I've heard this like in my surroundings as well, and I always thought that it is just such a shame. And now this morning I was listening to a podcast and I heard it again, and I was like, okay, I think I really want to tap into this. And the question that was asked in the podcast was if there were any traumas that really changed that person's life. And that person said that trauma is just such a big word and quite heavy, and that she thought that the things that she went through in her life weren't as big as big traumas. So it wasn't big enough, or it wasn't bad enough, or it wasn't important enough as really big things, right? And I heard this and I was like, okay, I totally get what you mean, because she gave an example for I don't know, murder, she said. And I totally get what you mean, but at the same time, that is also not fully accepting that what happened to you or with you, or how you want to put it, is also a trauma. And that in the whole world of trauma, there's no contest about like which trauma is bigger than the other, right? And that was something that I wanted to tap into today, because I heard this and I was like, this honestly makes me a bit sad, because you're also making it less important for yourself, because you know that there are people that are going through worse. And there are always people that are going through worse things than you're going through. But that doesn't mean that it isn't a trauma. And I found it very important to talk about this, mainly because I've heard this a lot and I've heard other people say this as well. And the interesting thing is, the only thing that trauma is that if we can't fully feel and process an emotion because it is too much and just too much for your system and too much for yourself to handle, then it becomes a trauma. That's what a trauma is, right? So it can be a big thing. It can be murder. It can be, I don't know, fighting. It can be all those things. But it can also just be that you fell from your bike as a little kid and didn't get like the care that you needed, right? Or like, I don't know, these kinds of things, right? And that doesn't mean that you can still have that impact of the thing that you went through. And I think this is really something that I want to talk about, because it is making your own situation and your own thing that you went through smaller, because it wasn't as big as murder, or because it wasn't as big as murder. It wasn't as big as war, right? And that's why I want to talk about it, because by making it smaller, you're also still denying it. And by not denying it, you're not allowing it. And by not allowing it, you keep on suppressing the trauma, which means that you are not able to fully work with it. And this is exactly the reason why I wanted to tap into this, because as long as you're not able to acknowledge that the thing that you went through was a trauma, or the thing that you went through was really bad, it is really hard to work with that and to grow from that, but also to let that be what it was, and go to the other side of things, see the lesson. And this is why I wanted to tap into this, because Doesn't matter how big or how small the trauma was, it is still big enough for you to work with. And that's why I said in the beginning that it is never a competition, or like another trauma is more important than this trauma, because that is just not the way it works. Not for you, at least, right? Because you're the only one who's experiencing the traumas in your life. So then it doesn't make sense to compare your trauma to other people's trauma and then make the conclusion that what they went through is worse than what you went through. So therefore, it isn't as bad, or therefore it isn't a trauma, right? And the interesting thing is, often by like naming it what it is, or like defining it what it is, that is actually where the healing process starts. So that is the first step, right? Acknowledging that it is there, and then allowing the emotions to be there, and then allowing the shift also to happen, and like work with it. Because I truly believe, and I also always tell this to my client, like a trauma only comes up when it is like you being ready to work with it. That's when the trauma comes up again, right? An old trauma, like in your awareness. That's what I mean. So an old trauma only comes back up in your awareness if you're truly ready to work with it. So therefore, your body always knows, and therefore you always know. And therefore, it is still okay to call the thing what it is. And therefore, it's not a competition, and therefore, it doesn't matter what anyone else went through, because it doesn't make the thing that you went through less important. And that is something, I heard that and I was like, wow, for me, that is so interesting, because for example, if I look at the traumas that I went through in my life, but also the traumas that I work with, if I treated them that way instead of the way that I did, I would not be here. I would not be still dancing, for example. I would not be like teaching. I would not be having this podcast, because I would probably be very sick, or very unhappy, or very depressed, right? Because I knew that it was time for me to look my trauma in the eye and really work with it. Because I knew I was robbing myself from certain experiences by not doing it. So therefore, I just want to say is that it is never needed from you to try to make your trauma less important. And I think if you listen to my health story, I think that is the perfect example for this, all right? Because there I also share in the end of the episode, I think, is that I would also belittle it in the beginning. I would say, well, it's okay. It happened, right? It is what it is. But no, that's not the case, because that doesn't make it like, that doesn't make my feelings like less valid. I would also say that it wasn't my story to tell. But then again, whose story is it? It was mine, right? So by me reclaiming that, by me reclaiming that whole experience for myself and all the emotions that I couldn't fully feel at that time, I was able to finally work with it after a year of just suppressing it, right? And I got a bit passionate there. I'm sorry about that. But that is something that I heard that, and I was like, I really want to record this podcast, because it is important that we hear that, we process that, and then when we hear someone else say that again, you can say, hey, I get what you mean, but it doesn't make the thing that you went through not a trauma, or like less tragic, or like less big of an experience. Because for me, that is a really, really important point, right? In a world where we always comparing ourselves to other people, like we're so used to doing that nowadays. I think it is really important that we sometimes say, hey, I hear you and thank you for expressing that. but that doesn't mean that it is less. And I think that is a really important big step in your journey. That on itself is reclaiming your power. Because reclaiming your power, and this is also what I talk about in my new signature program, which is called Reclaim Your Power. But reclaiming your power is not about like only reclaiming your present. And that is what is really important to me, because it is about reclaiming your past as well, your present and your future. Because working with your traumas, working with the things that you went through, working with like all the things and all the patterns that are keeping you small is helping your present, is helping your future, is fully reclaiming your power. And therefore, it is really, 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 really important to acknowledge that to yourself as well. And if you really don't like the word trauma, don't use trauma. Like, that's not a need. But I just thought in this like conversation, it was just such an interesting thing. And it's because I also heard people around me say it that I was like, I think I want to speak on this. Like, if you don't feel comfortable with the word trauma, fine. But don't belittle the situation for yourself. You don't have to make it smaller. You don't. Especially not to yourself. Because the thing is, and this might trigger you, but if you're like making it smaller for other people when you tell a story, you're lying, right? But the thing is, you're also lying to yourself. You're also stopping yourself. And that's not what I want for you. Yeah. So this was a little nugget that just popped in, and I was like, okay, I think I just need to share this. I think I just need to record a podcast. And this is actually also the only thing that I wanted to talk about. So I'm guessing it's also going to be a more shorter episode, which is fine. You can listen to it 2 times, 3 times, share it with your friends. Like do whatever feels good to you, right? And every time when you feel like that you are like making a situation smaller for yourself or less important or less big for yourself, then listen to this again or write it down somewhere, that you just know that you'd never, ever, ever, ever have to make a situation that you ran through, which was very painful, smaller. Not for yourself, not for other people. So yeah. And I think we are aware of that there are like messed up things happening in the world. But that still means that you also get to get your feelings. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to share. Um, I don't know if you notice it, but like on another topic, like a good thing actually to work with your trauma is forgiveness. And it's not only about forgiving other people, it's also mostly about forgiving yourself, right? And what I just talked about is actually a big part of that. I recently did a free masterclass actually about this. It was called Reclaiming Forgiveness. Um, and I first wanted to open the replay for like just a week or two, but I still got like messages from people that wanted to recording and still people signing up because I forgot to put it down. So I decided to just leave it there. So if you want to have the recording, I will put it in the episode subscription description. I still make that mistake. I'm having this podcast for like a year or so, and I still missed the two of them up, but that's fine. So if you want that replay of the masterclass, you can still watch it back. Yeah. And if you're interested in working with me more, my new signature program, Reclaim Your Power, just launched, which I'm very, very, very excited about. It is a 6-month program with a 9-month payment, because I think the most important thing is to do the aftermath. So after you finish the 6 months, you have an additional 3 months of group calls with me to ask your questions, ask for extra support. because I often think that the aftercare is something that is misunderstood or like not included. And I really wanted to include that. So that is why I decided to make it a 9-month payment. And also to make it more accessible for you all. So yeah, you can find that all on my website, more information about that all. And I will put that link also down below. I'm just gonna say that from now on. I'm not even gonna like struggle with description, like all the descriptions. I'm not gonna do it anymore. Again, thank you so much for listening. I actually have a lot of exciting guests lined up to come on this podcast. I've been very busy recording it for you all, and I am very excited about like different perspectives and different point of views to share with you. Yeah, I guess that. Thank you so much for listening again. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I know I really need to do this more often and say it more often, but it would really help me actually. And yeah, if you found it a good episode and you like the episode, please share it with a friend, a family member, someone that just needs to hear it today. I guess that was that. We will see each other. Well, you will see me very soon. Bye bye.